What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from hookupheadlines.com coming back at y'all today with my post-game kind of reaction and analysis after Texas comes up with a very convincing dominant performance to beat West Virginia on February 11th at the Moody Center by the final score of 94-60. This is the 20th win on the season for the Longhorns. They moved to 9-3 in Big 12 play, 20-5 on the season overall. Texas maintains first place in the Big 12 standings, outright first place over a handful of teams that are within about a game and a half of Texas, depending on how the rest of today's action shakes out. I believe the one team that is officially one game behind Texas now in the Big 12 standings is Kansas at 8-4 after they came up with a win today. But yeah, let me kind of dive into some of my initial thoughts, my reaction to the win, and kind of give some overarching notes here to start off. So a couple important things that happened in this game. For one, Texas is able to sweep the season series against West Virginia. Two pretty impressive wins. They beat West Virginia, I believe, by 8 points a couple of weeks ago in Morgantown. WVU Coliseum has not been an easy place to win this season, as proven by West Virginia's, a 5-point win earlier in the week over Iowa State. So Texas beating West Virginia by a combined, 42 points, I believe, to come up with the season sweep, or the regular season series sweep, is gigantic, I think. There's no easy wins in the Big 12, at least unless you're looking at it relatively. So this, like I said, this is really important to be able to take care of business like this, stay in first place in the Big 12 standings. Another thing, this margin of victory, the 34 points that Texas won by, is the tied for the largest margin of victory in any Big 12 game so far this season, with Iowa State's win over Texas Tech in Ames last month. So, again, it's very rare that you can beat a Big 12 team by more than maybe a dozen points, let alone beating another Big 12 team by 30. So Texas continues to stay pretty dominant on their home court. I believe the record now is 5-1 in Big 12 play at the Moody Center. So Texas continues to take care of business there. And, we move one game closer to being able to secure the Big 12 regular season title. Texas, this kind of stretch that they have right now, Saturday and Monday, they beat West Virginia, then they travel to Texas Tech, and then they return home on next Saturday to face OU at the Moody Center. This 3-game stretch that Texas is facing right now, while it might not look as difficult on paper as some of the previous games that Texas has faced, which is true. I mean, the previous 4 games they had played were against top 11 ranked teams, 3 of which came on the road. But you got to be able to still take care of business in games that might not be coming against ranked opponents, or teams that might, when you're facing teams that might be ranked in the bottom half of the Big 12. So like I said, being able to take care of business here, do it as convincingly as Texas did, looking as good as they did on both ends of the floor. West Virginia, while they're kind of middle of the road in terms of scoring in the Big 12, they're still a team in terms of offensive rating. I believe that ranks in the top 60 in the country. They're still averaging around 78 points per game on the season. Texas held them to 60. Texas really did a nice job in terms of limiting West Virginia's shooting in this game. West Virginia ends up shooting 35% from the field. They did shoot around 38% from 3. But given that Texas shot around 59% from 3, it really makes West Virginia shooting there look look pretty manageable. A few other things of note here, if you're just looking at the box score and, definitely from the eye test of watching this game, one of the biggest factors to this game is Texas turned West Virginia over 20 times. And Texas only turned the ball over 6 times. Winning the turnover battle by a margin of 14, more often than not, is going to win you games by a pretty significant, or at least a comfortable margin. A couple other things here. Texas gets 32 points off turnovers compared to just 8 for West Virginia. They dominated the points in the paint, 28-12, which was kind of a issue that Texas was facing in the last few outings, or at least against Kansas. Texas was getting outscored in the paint, where I felt like they actually had an edge there. So nice to see the front court unit respond pretty well there. The bench was huge in this one. You got guys stepping up. Sir Jabari Rice, namely, I'll get into his performance in a bit here, but you get 47 bench points for Texas compared to 29 for West Virginia. Texas continues to show that it has the best bench in terms of offensive production in the Big 12. And again, this is a strong response from Texas's bench after they, weren't as impactful on the game as I expected against Kansas, and where Kansas's bench actually outscored Texas. So all that said, I really liked the way that Texas came out on both ends of the floor. They kind of set the tone right from the get-go at halftime. I think they had like a 19 or 20 point lead, and they didn't really let off the gas in the second half. 21 point lead, 51-30 lead at half, and then won the second half 43-30. So even when Rodney Terry kind of emptied out the bench, Texas was still on fire. So, I guess in terms of individual performances for this, I would start with two players. I mentioned these two guys in my studs and duds, which I'll link in the description below as always for my post-game reactions. But, the first guy that really stuck out to me, I mentioned him a moment ago, was Sir'Jabari Rice. He only played 17 minutes off the bench in this game, finished with 24 points, a game high. I believe that's a season high for him as well. On just 5 of 6 shooting from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, and a perfect 10 of 10 from the free throw line. Texas shot 24 of 25 from the free throw line in this game. A miss from Dylan Dessou was the only hiccup. Texas has been insane from the free throw line throughout this season, but really in the last few games, they've been on target almost every single attempt. Rice didn't really do much in the box score besides scoring, but when you're talking about a guy that's putting up nearly 1.5 points per minute and averaging almost 4 points per field goal attempt, he's maximizing his efficiency in the exact place you need him to. So that was huge. Another player that I have to give some shouts to is Timmy Allen. He reached a good milestone in this game, an important milestone, and big achievement, 2,000 career points. He's now one of, I believe, 22 active players in college hoops that has reached that marker. Marcus Carr being another one of those. Timmy Allen, he was solid in this game, 4 of 10 shooting from the field, so not the most efficient in that regard, but he goes 6 of 6 from the free throw line, so he still ends up averaging nearly 1.5 points per field goal attempt. 9 rebounds, a team high. That was huge to be able to keep Texas kind of on the same pace as West Virginia on the glass. They end up losing the battle on the boards by a margin of 3, but Texas hasn't been a very good rebounding team as it relates to the rest of the Big 12 this season. I believe in terms of rebounding margin, they rank in the bottom 3 in the conference. And so, check here just to make sure. Total rebounds, they rank 10th, and margin, it's 9th. So, like I said, to be able to get that sort of effort from Timmy Allen was huge. To be able to give Texas some type of post presence there. 4 assists, no turnovers, 1 steal. He continued to facilitate the offense well, showed off that court vision. I've mentioned it all season long, his ability to facilitate the offense and really just be a generic playmaker, or, an overall playmaker, I guess is a better way to put that. From, that high post, the elbow, from the corner, it's really anywhere within 8 to 15 feet from the hoop inside the arc. He's been money just being able to create offense for Texas. All congrats to Timmy Allen. Again, he's been really solid for Texas in Big 12 play, and that continued in this one. I didn't mention this guy in my studs and duds, but if not for the milestone day for Timmy Allen, that second stud spot might have gone to Marcus Carr. He had another big outing. He was really good for Texas on both ends of the floor, played really solid, continued to play really solid perimeter defense, 16 points on 7-11 shooting from the field, 2 of 3 from beyond the arc, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, just 1 turnover, and 3 steals. So Carr was huge in this game. I've mentioned it the last 2 outings that, seeing Marcus Carr come back alive the way he has on the offensive end, especially with, 29 points, somewhere in that ballpark against Kansas, where he kind of got out of that slump that he was facing the prior 3 games. And even in the first half against Kansas, he was really slow out of the gates. So it looks like Marcus Carr, from what we've seen the last, last three halves of basketball is kind of turning the page, getting back to the usual version we've seen of him this season. A couple other players I wanted to give shout-outs to in this game. One, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him, is Arterio Morris. He was really solid for Texas in 20 minutes off the bench. I believe that is the most playing time he's received under Terry in Big 12 play. So it was nice to see him getting that run off the bench, for one. But for two, he continued to play well when he's actually given like a higher volume of looks, more touches, just more possessions on the floor, honestly, more exposure, in conference games. Goes 4 of 8 from the field, again, 12 points, 2 of 4 from deep, perfect on 2 attempts from the free throw line. He also had 3 rebounds, 1 assist, no turnover, and 1 steal. He continued to play really solid defense as well. His tenacity, his chops for on-ball defense and help defense as well, his timing there, all those factors have been rock solid this season, at least in the minutes that I have seen him on the floor. I guess the last 2 players that I wanted to talk about, at this point, probably the last player actually that I want to talk about from this one, is Dylan Dessou. He gave Texas a spark early. He ran into foul trouble again, so it kind of limited his playing time. He ends up getting just 16 minutes on the floor. But he was a spark plug that Texas needed out of the gate. He had a big dunk early on, drew an early foul in the first half when Texas was down against West Virginia early on in this game. He comes up with 8 points on 3 of 5 shooting from the field, 2 of 3 from the line, but 2 rebounds, 1 was an offensive board, 2 assists, no turnovers, and a block. So for being on the court for just 16 minutes and considering his volume of touches has not been extraordinarily high lately, I thought this was a positive outing for him. I guess just looking forward now and, kind of wrapping up my thoughts for this game. For one, this is I think I mentioned a lot, but I think this is an important win for Texas just from the perspective of not only responding from the loss to Kansas that I believe it snapped a 2-game winning streak. Yeah. The loss to Kansas on Big Monday, but, you also have some momentum to ride on before you go into what could be a more difficult test than expected on Monday against Texas Tech. It's a quick 2-day turnaround to go play in Lubbock, a spot that has been more difficult to play than I think a lot of people would give Tech credit for. They got their first win in Big 12 play against Iowa State in Lubbock. I believe that was a couple of weeks ago. And they played some close games there. They took OU to OT there, lost by 3 to Kansas. Played Baylor closer than I think a lot of people would have expected to a single-digit loss. So Texas Tech's not going to be a pushover at home. It'll be interesting to see how they play against Kansas State today, or actually tonight. They have a night game. Texas will have a chance to move its winning streak to 2 games before they return home for Red River next weekend to face OU. But I would say at this point, talked about Texas being in outright first place in the Big 12 standings, more than halfway through the conference slate. If Texas can get 3 wins in a row here, that brings them to 11 on the season in conference play. And while you do have a difficult end to the season, I think 12 or 13 wins is probably a good marker to set to be able to challenge for the Big 12 regular season title. I think if you end up reaching 13 or 14, you're pretty locked in. I don't foresee like Kansas State, Iowa State, or anyone of that sort being able to push for 13, definitely not 14 wins. I mean, that's not even possible for a lot of the teams trailing Texas at this point. So, like I said, Big 12 regular season title within striking distance. Texas looks really, really good at home again before an important stretch of games coming up in the next couple of weeks to try and be able to secure the first Big 12 regular season title in more than a decade for the Longhorns. So I continue to be impressed with how Rodney Terry is keeping this team together. The senior trio, Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, and Serge Bari Rice continue to just do astounding things for Texas throughout most of the season. Rice and Allen especially have been really good for Texas of late. And, we got glimpses of what guys like Arterio Morris and, some good spurts from Dylan Mitchell can do. So some of the younger guys contributed here as well. Anyway, for Andrew Miller, headlines.com, that's pretty much it. Welcome.